Okay. What page?
Good question. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Yud Aleph, page 11 and 12. Yesterday was Yud Aleph. Today is Yud Beis. So, Shkoyach Levi for taking over for a couple days. So we left off at the top line of Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph, and Tanya, and away we go. So Tanya Amru Olav al Binyamin Atzadik Shahaya Mamuna al Kupa Shel Tzedakah. So we were talking about public funds, and Binyamin Tzaddik, he was in charge of the kupa, of the public fund of tzedakah to give out. So during a year of famine, there wasn't a lot of money and food. So a woman approached Binyamin Tzaddik. Rabbi Parnasani, Rabbi, support me. My goodness, did we have nothing left? If you don't go ahead and support me, then a woman and her 7 sons will go ahead and die, referring to herself. So Binyamin Tzaddik got up upon a son Mishalot. So he gave from his own pocket. Later time. So years later, meanwhile later, Binyamin Tzaddik became sick, and he was going to die. So Malchei said before Hakadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono Shel Olam, Ata Amarta Kol HaMekayim Nefesh Achas Mi'Yisrael Kilu Kayim Malay. Right? You've said whoever goes ahead and keeps alive and supports even one soul, it's like he has supported the entire world. And Binyamin Tzaddik, right, who went ahead and supported not just one, but a woman and her 7 sons, right? He should die. His years should be limited. So immediately his Gzardin was torn up, and Tana was taught. He lived an additional 22 years after this occurrence. So Tana Rabbanan. Second last skinny line on Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph. Maisa b'Munvaz Hamelach. So there was a Maisa Munvaz, was a king of the Chashmonai. So Munvaz. Yeah, I think he was there. I think he was whether he was a convert or not. So I would tell you, but I have my one page of. He was the son. You can see my one page. I think in my entire shas, unless I had a little kid or something like that. Either 7.5 years ago or 15 years ago, my page was torn, so I don't have the notes on Moonbugs. Huh? Yeah, Helena Malka. Yeah. Right, Helena Malka. Right.
Oh, Helena.
So, anyways, so he had this treasury, the royal treasury. He was passed down from generation to generation from his father's, from the family, and meanwhile. So was so he emptied out. Right, he emptied out, I guess the royal treasury, giving out to those who were poor, who were in need during his years. So what happens? So his brothers and his father's house, they all came himself. Right. In other words, every generation they added to our treasury. Right, they collect the taxes, and then we got wealthier and wealthier, and you give it all away. Some of them right? So they were more serious about investing, in this world than I was, looking to the world, the world above. Shnamar Pasuk says, "Emes meres tatzmiach titzmach v'tzedek mishamayim nishkov." So it says over there that they will plant in this world, but then will grow in the Shemayim up in heavens. And right, they put it in a place where man can go ahead and reach. They can break into the safe, steal the money. Right, they can go online and hack the system, whatever it is. But me, right, I put it in a place, this mitzvahs and the credit for giving charity, that is, no man can go ahead and touch that. It says, right, righteousness and charity, right, and truth, right? So those are the pillars, the foundation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's throne. And they went ahead and were interested in something that didn't give fruits, didn't grow from the. But giving charity, that gives perish. And the Pasuk says, "Amru tzadik ki toiv ki pri It says over there that they will go ahead and eat, fruits from the righteousness. Obviously, right? They went ahead and they put money away. And I went ahead and basically, we got souls for our, by supporting the people. We've basically, provided for these souls. As the pasuk says, "Pri tzadik eitz chayim v'lekech nefasha is kacha." Right, the fruits of the tzaddik, right, will sprout and they'll take nefashos from them. And avaisei ganzulachem and gazati that's me, right? And they went ahead and did for others. In other words, that others should become wealthy, and I went ahead and took it and gave it that I'll get credit for me. Shnamar, the pasuk says, "V'lochati yet tzedakah," right? That you will have the righteousness, and others that tzedakah will be for you. And avaisei ganzu le'elam hazeh le'elam habam. Right, they put away money for this world, and I put away for the world. The question says the halach lefanecha tigach kavod Hashem yasbaka. So it says over there, right, that the tzedakah will walk ahead. It will basically be the zuchusim, for those who give tzedakah. Fine. Now back to the Mishnah. We discussed in the Mishnah that who has the people of the town have to go ahead and give money for security. Assessments and taxes for the city wall, for security, for the to go around, weapons. So, and who's there? So he said people that live there for 12 months, or somebody that purchased a house there. From Kanaba Beis Dira Harehu Kanshia. Then he's considered to be like a citizen, and the citizens are obligated to go ahead and pay towards the city.
If you're planning to buy an apartment in Israel, let's keep one day.
Yeah, like that. Right, you have an investment. So how much you got to go ahead and buy? So Masnisin, the like Rav Shimon Gamliel, I mentioned like Rav Shimon Gamliel, the tiny women buy Rav Shimon Gamliel. Aimer, Kanaba Karka Kolshu, Areu Kanshia ear. Right, you don't have to buy a base dira. All you have to buy is any amount of land. Yeah, so that would be land. I Vatanya Rishon Gamliel Aimer in Kana Sham Shem Karka really Bezbir Hareu Kanshia ear. Doesn't say if you buy land, right, that is fit for a base dira, then it's like that. Then you're considered like a citizen. So my answer is trade tonight. I'll leave the Rishon Gamliel. So in other words, our Mishnah says you have to go ahead and buy a house, and then Rishon Gamliel says you have to buy land. So my focus as to what Rishon Gamliel says. One was that any amount of land, and the other one is let's say a land fit for building a house. So you got to buy a lot. The city of Chicago by 25 by 125. This is the park that our lots are 30 and not 25. Fine. Mishnah. Next Mishnah says the Mishnah. You can't go. You do not go ahead and basically force a division in a chutzner unless each individual end up with 4 amos. So 2 people had houses connected into a courtyard. They share the courtyard, and one of them says, I want my privacy is divided. You can only force the division as long as the other guy gets dalad amos at least. And let's say they own the field together, so they can't go ahead and divide the field until each one is able to go ahead and plant 9 kav, right? A certain amount of volume, 9 kav, a large amount. If each one is able to go ahead and plant and get 9 kavim, so then that would be enough of now the land has a minimal usage, right? We'll soon see in the Gemara that basically there's economies of scale. In other words, you have to go ahead and hire a person to plow, a person to plant. So if I go ahead and have a smaller amount, then I still have to pay a day's wage for somebody, but he won't be busy the entire day. So Tisha Kavin will basically be sufficient for a person to hire a person and maximize his time. I hire him for 8 hours, and it takes him 8 hours. But if it's a smaller parcel, I have to hire him for 8 hours because he's a day worker, but it only takes him 5 hours. So therefore, there's a loss to the neighbor if he forces a divide. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Achi about Tisha Chatzin Kavin Lezev, Tisha Chatzin Kavin Lezev. No, it's not 9 kav for each one, it's 9 half kavs for each one, 4.5. Below a sagina, not a garden, Achi about Chatzi Kav Lezev, Chatzi Kav Lezev, or a garden which takes a little longer, but that would be a half a kav for each one. Rabbi Kiva Omer, base roiva, right? No, it has not a half a kav, but rather a quarter of a kav, half the amount. Tarklin, and not these different types of, let's say, halls or salons or large areas that they own together. they can't divide. V'lo is a shevech or a dovecoat, v'lo is a talis or a garment, v'lo is a merchatz or a bathhouse, v'lo is a beis abad or a press, v'lo is beis shachan or an irrigated field. Until each one has its full use. So if we own a bathhouse together, a very large bathhouse with multiple, shower rooms and mikvahs and saunas and whatever it is. So if we can divide it, each one has a full usage. To each of ours, just they happen to be smaller, half the size, but as full usage, then you can do it. If it's a large wine press, and each of us can get a wine press out of it, or oil press, then that'll be sufficient. But if you can't go ahead and divide it that way, and as we divide a bathhouse, basically you get the bathrooms and I get the schwitz, so that doesn't work because each one is not self-sufficient. That klal, this is the rule. Kol she'yichol v'shema. Anything you divide and it still has its name, it's still known as a bathhouse, even though it's half the size, cholkin, then you can go ahead and divide it however you love, ain cholkin. But if not, then you can't go ahead and force a divide.
Suit. Get a set jacket and pants. You get jacket.
So the garments, they used to go ahead, right, and so, it wasn't just a large suit, a large jacket, it was basically a long garment that you can use it over to wrap yourself. So you can cut the garment and still use it, to wrap it over yourself, that'll be sufficient. So Amisai, when are all these cases that we've discussed in the Mishnah, Bisman Shein Shneim Reitzim, when they don't want to go ahead and divide it together? Aval Bisman Shneim Reitzim, but let's say they both want to divide it, and even though they're going to end up with a tiny yard, 2 by 2 amos, but they both want it. Then if they want to go ahead, it's only mammon, they can choose to divide the mammon in such a way. And the Kisvei HaKodesh, however, when it comes to Kisvei HaKodesh, right, let's say Sifrei Tanakh, even though they both want to do it, let's say we want to go ahead, we'll see in the Gemara later, let's say we want to go ahead and split our Trey Asar, right? You take 6 and I'll take 6, or whatever it is. We'll see if that's an example. I have no idea, don't recall. You can't go ahead and force a division, right? So I'm not sure if it's referring to, let's say, a Sefer Torah, right? You take Bereshis and Shmos, and I'll take the other 3, or maybe something that's written together, but each one is dependent, like Trey Asar, right? Because that is not just mammon, that's also has to do with the kedusha of the Sifrei Kodesh. Fine, that was the mission. So we said the first case was, so Mark and I, we share a yard. So I said I can go ahead and enforce it as long as Mark ends up with Dalet Amos and I end up with Dalet Amos. So Amar Rabasi, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. So Amos Shamar, that which we say for Amos, Chutz Mishal Psachim, that is besides the entrances. Now there was an area in front where we'll soon see that it was used. You couldn't go ahead and bring everything in at once. So basically, they would unload. All right, sure, thank you. I was up since the 4s. I went to sleep early, so.
How many do you have?
8 are usually pretty good. I don't have a lot of time to drink.
It's like a landing zone in front of the house.
Right, landing zone for the house. So 4x4 is used to unload and used to unload and go ahead and bring it inside. So in other words, so Mark and I own a yard together. So that which we said we each have to end up with Dalet Amos, that's excluding the Dalet Amos that you're required by your doorway. So it's actually not 4x4. It's actually going to be like 8x4, right? Because he has 4x4 of his one space. And then he has a 4x4, right? 4x4 plus 4x4 is 8x4, not 8x8. If you don't, then that's, I guess, 7th grade math, right? Now, so we say, so Tanya Hamihak, it's similar. You can't go ahead and divide unless each one has a space of basically 8 amos by 4 amos. Our Mishnah says Arba amos lezev, Arba amos lezev. Our Mishnah says 4x4. What's his 8? Right? So Elishma. Like Ravas is saying that each one has a minimum of 1 Pesach. Then, in addition to the 4 amos for the Pesach, we also get 4 amos of a yard. And some actually have this version just a slightly different way. So tonight we go to the we don't go ahead and divide a chatzir unless each one gets 4 amos by 4 amos. We learn in the Brayz the Shmona amos is Shmona amos is we learn in the Brayz that each one has to get 8 amos. Rabasi says Rabbi Yechanan, that which our Mishnah says you get Dalet Amos, that shavar chutz mishal psachim. That's besides, right, the front area of by the door where you get 4x4. And Amar Rav Huna says Rav Huna chatzir miskalekes lefi psacheho. Right? When let's say the divide, a father leaves over an estate to his sons. This one gets one house, and this one gets another house. And then one guy has two doors into the chutzner, and the other guy gets one door. So you divide the chutzner. You have two doors into the chutzner. I have one door. So therefore, the guy with two doors gets 2/3. And the guy with one door gets 1/3. Each one gets divided by the doors. No. No, that's not true. Each guy, you have a door, you get a 4x4 outside the door. And then the rest is divided easily. So in other words, the guy with one entrance gets 4x4. The guy with two entrances gets 8x4. And then the rest, they split 50-50. And Tani Kavasi Rachiza, the entrances of a chutzner, they get arba amos. This guy who has one entrance, he gets 4 amos. The guy who has 2 psachim, naitel shmeina amos, he gets 8 amos. The other one, the rest is divided evenly. And one guy, let's say, he had a grand Pesach entrance into the courtyard, and it was, let's say, 8 amos wide. So Naitel Shmana Amos can I get a Pesach? So he gets 8 amos can I Pesach by Arba Amos b'Chatzar and 4 amos into the Chatzar. So the Gemara says Arba Amos b'Chatzar. Maybe that's how we're talking about. What does this mean? He gets 4 amos into the Chatzar. Some Rabbi Yahaki Karas means to say Naitel Shmana Amos b'Oirech HaChatzar. He gets 8 amos to the length of the Chatzar. The Arba Amos b'Roichav, and then 4 amos into the width. Basically 8x4 because 8 was the length of the doorway and 4 was the depth into the courtyard of his entrance. Fine. 2 lines for the bottom. For the coffee. So Amar Meimar, hi Pera the souffle. So a person goes ahead, let's say a pit that they leave over to put in old seeds and fruits and stuff for it to decompose, right, to use later on, I guess for fertilizer, right? So they have it to decompose. So there's an entrance. So which way do you go to load and unload into the pit? A composter. So you get 4. You get from each side. This is only, let's say, when the father owned it. Before they didn't establish a certain, direction where you load and unload it from. However, to the page. But let's say the father always used only just, he loaded and unloaded from the north. You only get the area that was used. Now, since that was creatable, since he has already the right of way, he already created that this is the entrance to this pit. So therefore, the other sides are not an entrance to the pit, only the one that was established.
So you're talking about what sides you are allowed to force the split, and now we're actually talking about.
So let's say right. So the father left over, assets to the children. So one of the sons gets this pit. So the guy will say, hey, I need an easement. I need access into the pit. So I get, from each side. So if there was already established a right of way or an easement that they always led from there, then no. Dad always used from the north. You just get the 4x4 area north of the pit, and the rest will be part of, the general division amongst the brothers, as opposed to part of the pit.
I guess the difference is, first of all, they actually were partners already without it being split. It's like they're partners.
Right. In other words, you get the pit, and then the other guy will get the barn.
The first case was they both co-owned the field.
Right. Correct.
So therefore, then one guy decides 10 years later, you know what? We want
to divide it. Right.
So you can force them to split it. So there's enough.
Right. But it could be also that in a case of, it would really go both ways. And when the sons divide it, it's really like a partnership before then, right? Because when the father dies, everyone owes everything together, and then they divide it, right? Unless you say Brera, then it goes back to the initial. But let's say you don't say that, right? So the moment the father dies, right? So we all own all the assets, so we got divided by value. So okay, you get the pit, and I get the barn. Okay, so the barn, you get the entrance in front of the barn. But the pits, so the guy says, hey, I want to get, all the access from all sides. No, you don't get access. If the right of way was already established, you only get one side, but you do get something. And then the rest of the land, it would be also divided, 50-50 or amongst the brothers. So Amar Huna Achsadra. So Achsadra is like a gazebo, right? Like a pole building, you have, let's see, a room this size. all you have is a portico. You have 4 posts in the corner. There is no walls, and you have a roof. So now, right. So if you so the truth is, so people don't then leave their dining room table and living room furniture and stuff like that. So therefore, this building is really sort of empty, right? Pretty easy to gain access and out. So it says Rav Huna Sadra Ela Dalet Amos. He doesn't get Dalet Amos outside the entrance of the Echsadra. Why is that? Time of my. What's the reason why we say nobody get Dalet al Dalet? Is Mishum Peiruk Masri, right? To go ahead and unload, right, your package that you're carrying, outside your entrance in order to bring it in, because there's not a lot of space to bring it in. However, but over here, since you don't need to go ahead and empty the load outside and then start bringing it in, you can just bring the load in, right? Because there's plenty of space inside. So therefore, you don't get Dalet outside this Achsadra. So whether it's outside of a gatehouse or whether it's outside this portico or gazebo, or you want to call it, yesh lahen Dalet Amos. You do get Dalet Amos outside. What do you mean? We just said you do not get, because you don't need the space. So our answer is no. That's referring to Achsadra de Beirav, a gazebo or portico, or these other areas that actually had walls. It had walls, therefore there's likely furniture inside. There's not room to just throw in whatever you're bringing. You have to go ahead and unload it outside. So once it's Achsadra de Beirav, Shita, that's obvious. The Gemara has the answers. So it says, right? It's like a full house, and with furniture, and therefore, of course, you need outside. So it says, Achsadra Rumaisa, right? Achsadra Rumaisa, where there was, let's say, half walls, they didn't go all the way up. Let's say they only went up Dalet Amos or whatever it is, and therefore, maybe you would say there's no space. You can go ahead and unload inside. Kamash Malon, that you do get Dalet Amos because it's likely that there's furniture and other things inside this Achsadra. So So this gatehouse, this portico, we're going to call it merpesas, and a balcony, right? Let's say a second floor balcony that there's a ladder to come down. So you go ahead and enter the second floor units from the merpesed. They have Dalet Amos. So how you come? You shabatim suchim merpesas. So let's say there were 5 upstairs units. They'd all, you enter from this balcony. Right, so there's 5 entrances to the balcony, and the balcony has 1 ladder. It's going up and down. So how much space in the chutzner does this Achsadra get? So if there's 5 people in the Merpesas, ein lahem el Dalet Amos bilvad. They only get 4 Amos bilvad, because since they use the same entrance, so you don't need, right? Each one does not get Dalet Amos. It's not 4 by 4 times 5. It's rather they use 1 entrance. So therefore, there's 1 area that's established for the people upstairs who use Achsadra, and that's all they get. So, what about Lul Shel Tarnagayla? What about a chicken coop? Yesh lo Dalet Amos, ein lo Dalet Amos. Do you get an extra Dalet Amos outside the entrance of the chicken coop or not? So once again, the Gemara goes back to this verse. So Amalei Tamamai, what's the reason why one does get Dalet Amos, Mishum Perek, in order to go ahead and load and unload? So over here, the chickens go up and down themselves. They don't need Dalet Amos outside the chicken coop. You don't need Dalet Amos outside the chicken coop. Therefore, you don't get that space. Right? Boy, Rava may Rav Nachman. Ask Rav a question for Rav Nachman. Bias chasiv mekura v'chasiv in mekura. You have a house, and let's say part of it is roofed and part of it is not. Now, the area that's not roofed probably has, is not protected. If it's not protected, therefore, likely does not have furniture. There's plenty of space over there. So if there's plenty of space, you don't need Dalet al Dalet inside. But if the brother's half of it that's roofed. So do you get Dalet Amos outside this building or not? Yesh lo Dalet Amos, ein lo Dalet Amos. So Amarlei, ein lo Dalet Amos. You do not get Dalet Amos. Why is that? It's not when, let's say, it's roofed on the inside and the part, is closer to the outside. They can go in and unload there. Certainly, you don't need the Dalet Amos there. But even if the roofed area, which has all the furniture and stuff, is towards the outside by the entrance, and therefore you don't necessarily have a space to go ahead and immediately bring it in. Nevertheless, you can go ahead and go all the way in where the unroofed area is and unload over there, and therefore we do not go ahead and give you an extra space of Dalet al Dalet. So by Bnei Rav Huna by Rabbi Yami. So let's say like this case. Now, the situation in those days were, let's say there were multiple people, let's say 2 or 3 houses or whatever you want to call it, that shared a courtyard. You can call it 2 houses. 2 houses shared a courtyard. Now, that courtyard opened up into an alleyway, into a mavui, and that mavui eventually opened up into a Rishus Harabah.
The picture is on the bottom.
There's a picture,
Okay, but it's saying the chutzner is after the.
right, it'll be the bottom picture in the art scroll 11b2, right? That's be the situation. Now, so 2 people, they have a courtyard. So let's say I'm in a courtyard and I don't necessarily like the people who share the same mavui with me. So I have a courtyard. We're very frum. I have neighbors that I don't want to associate with so much. They are part of the Arukan gang, and it's a little dangerous. So what I say, I don't want to share a courtyard with them. I want to share a courtyard with the people in the alley behind us. So what am I going to do? I'll open the door for my courtyard instead of leading into my alleyway that I have now. I'll do it to another alleyway, right? I'm just creating a hole in my fence in order that to enter my property, I go through the other alley and not my original alley. So if I choose to go ahead and want to do that, do we say, can the people from the other mavui, alley 2, can they stop me and say, whoa. Till now we've only had 4 courtyards enter through our mavui, and we don't want a 5th one, right? We don't want more traffic. You guys, you're part of that one. You have no rights in here. The people of the courtyard could prevent them. They have a traffic for 4. We don't want traffic for 5. Oh, and Achsanya, and when it comes to, they used to go ahead and let's say the armies would go out and the people of the town had to go ahead and house and feed the armies. So how many does each house get? So that's lefi bnei adam ischalechas. So lefi absachim ischalechas. Do we divide it? And how many doorways the house has? And therefore it has 1 or 2 doors. So either it's 1 or 2. Or do we say by the amount of people living in the house? That's the responsibility. Lefi bnei adam ischalechas. Right? No, it goes by the amount of people in the house. So therefore, if somebody has 5 people living in a house, right, and the other one has 1 person living in a house, the people with 5 people have to house 5 times more than the person with 1. And Tana Melchus learns when it comes to the manure and the fertilizer and the chutzner that grows over time from the animals going there and walking upon it, that is divided amongst the doorways. So therefore the doorways, that's your portion of the zevel in the courtyard. And Achsanya and housing the soldiers that we just mentioned, lefi b'nei adam, it goes according to the amount of people, the census. And number of Huna, Echem B'nei Mavi should be engaged this time, Keneged Pischai. B'nei Mavi Makvinulav. A guy wants to go ahead, and this is my area where I enter my house. I want to go ahead and build a wall, right? Build a wall, a little privacy wall in the Mavui. And therefore, when you walk to your house, which is deeper in the alley, past mine, you sort of have to go around. So can I go ahead and put a wall in the Mavui by my house? Mm-hmm. So the people in the Mavui can say, this alley is commonly owned, and therefore you have no right to intrude on me walking straight to my doorway, and you can't go ahead and build a wall and force me to walk around.
Built inside the mavui, not in front.
Right, in the Mavui. Right. Now, so according to this, it appears that everybody has full rights in the entire Mavui. Right? Because that's the reason why people can prevent you to do that. So now you have this is actually there's a nice little cute little picture on this one. Picture on 11b3. Right, look at 11b3. If those who have the art scroll, right. So you have a long mavui. Imagine an alley. You enter the entrance and exit. There's one. We'll call it the entrance, right? So the entrance to the mavui. And a person, depending where he lives, right, you have to go either drive all the way to the back of it because your house is in the back, or you're in the front, right? So the question is like this.
Chesterfields.
Like the Chesterfields. Very good example, right? So right? So all of them could go ahead and use the space closest, let's say Chesterfields closest to Tui, right? By the entrance, because everybody needs to go in that area. However, the guy who's close to the exit can only use that area by the exit, by his house. He has no reason to go further down. He has none of his business to go further up into the alley because his house is not that way and the exit is not that way, even though it's public property, right? This is why you're going to bring it as a mason, right? So now I see you're thinking you're coming onto the question, right? Vashar and the rest of Mishamesh. So Vashar Mishamesh. Everyone can go ahead and use the second one. Vashnia Mishamesh Mechitzaina. And the guy who's in lot number 2 can only use lot number 2 and lot number 1, which is between him and the entrance, but he has no reason to go to 3, 4, and 5. Anin says Panimis. It turns out the guy who's in lot 5, Mishemeshes liatzma, he's the only one who can use the space. Mishemeshes in kol achas v'achas, and he could also use the area outside of 4, 3, 2, and 1. So what do you see over here? That if you have no business being in this area, right, then you don't have full rights there. So we had the previous case where the people said he can't build a wall. We got to walk around what he means in front of my house. Too bad. Right? The people can block it. It's everyone's business. And now this seems to say the Mavu is not everyone's business. So the Gemara says tonight, the Tani a person wants to go ahead and make his entrance from instead of his courtyard into Mavui A, wants to go ahead and basically make an entrance into Mavui B. So the people of Mavui B, they can stop it. However, but let's say originally his house was built and there was a door there and they just put up plywood. We don't enter from there anymore. So they once upon a time they used to go ahead and also use Mavui B, and now he closed up with plywood and he wants to reopen it. So if it was already once an entranceway and then he wants to go ahead and open it, they can't go ahead and stop him. That's the opinion of Rebbe. Why? Because he already established a right of way in Mavui B. Shimon Elazar says 5 courtyards. Everyone can go ahead and use all the areas. So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? We weren't talking about Chatzeros. We're talking about the Mavli open up into another Mavli. And you're talking about Chatzeros? So Gemara says, no, Chasurim actually is missing a part. This is how you're supposed to read it. So too said Rabbi, everyone can use the outer one close to the exit. Can only use that one. In other words, that was the opinion we saw earlier. Divrei Rabbi. The case we saw earlier was the opinion of Rabbi that said basically lot A or 1 can only be used by, 1 can only use that, and everybody else can use it because they have to go through 1 to get to 2, and so on and so forth. So therefore, everyone only has rights which they need. And Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, he says, no, that's not how it works, right? Everybody has equal rights. So even though the guy the entrance is right by his house, he's allowed to gander on into the farthest area of the mavui. So therefore, it's a machlokas tanaim as to whether a mavui is full use for everybody, or it should be just full use of what where your house is and upon your needs. Fine. 5 lines from the bottom. So if it was already previously open, let's say he closed it up and he wants to go already open it, they can't stop for opening it. Only if he didn't rip off, let's say the door frame. About parts of the sima, but once he rips off the door frame, that shows this is no longer an entrance, and therefore he can't go ahead and reopen it. And Amarle by the Rava, we actually have a brisa that supports you. So let's see, what is this brisa? We'll be skipping these 2 sets of parentheses. So Beis Sasum Yeshlo Dalad Amos. So in a house that was once, if it was closed up, right? But there's just plywood there. So he does have Dalad Amos outside of that doorway, right? Because it was established as a doorway. However, part of the psima, but if he rips off the frame, then Eilo Dalad Amos, he does not get special Dalad Amos. Skip the parentheses. And base now when it comes to a tumor, when it comes to a grave. So normally a grave is metame within Dalad Amos. But let's say it's more of a tomb, right? A tomb meaning there's an entrance to enter. So the tuba, the Dalad Amos, is only by the entrance, not by the size. Okay? So let's say there was an entrance there, but the entrance was closed off with plywood. So is this now considered to be a tomb, right? Which is just Dalad Amos by the entrance? Or, since you closed it off, maybe it's like a grave that should be Dalad Amos all around the sides. It's a base of Enamatame Kosivio. It's not Matame all around it. However, but however, you go ahead and you rip off the frame, then Matame Kosiva, then since you ripped off the frame, it's like there's no entrance there. There's no entrance there, it's like a grave, and therefore it's Matame in all directions. Fine. So let's say you have a mavui that connects two towns, right? You can travel from one town to another, right? So the people of one town, the mavui by them, want to go ahead and close it off by them. Can they go ahead and do it, even though it affects people from the other town? So if mavui, if it's the other people can stop them from going ahead and blocking off that mavui, because we also have equal rights in that mavui, because we travel from town to town. And not only in the case of, in other words, there is no other route from town A to town B, right? But even if there's another route that they can do A to B, and the people from A, right, can say, hey, B, we're closing it off, but you guys can walk around. Right? They can also prevent it, because like that, which Rabbi Yehuda Marav says, as Meitzah Sheikh, but Rabbim also the Kavlo. Once a right of way has been established by the public, you can't go ahead and stop them, and therefore you can't. They have the right to go ahead and prevent them from blocking up that path, that mavui. And Amarav, skip the parentheses. Amarav, Shmuel, Mavuyas Maflosh is Rishus Rabbim. Let's say you have an mavui that's open to Rishus Rabbim. Ubikshim b'nei Mavuyas lahami lahem tulasos. They want to go ahead and put doors close to the Rishus Rabbim, right? So we have a little privacy from the public way. B'nei Rishus Rabbim ma'akvin. The people of the Rishus Rabbim can go ahead and prevent them, because that's, this mavui has been used for a long time by the Rabbim. They thought to say Hani Mili b'Dalet Amos. It's only within the first Dalet Amos can the Rishus Rabbim prevent the Bnei Mavui to go ahead and put up some sort of door or fence or something. But within there, maybe the Bnei Rishus Rabbim can't.
They recess the door.
Right.
Or almost in, that should do.
So maybe the Rishus Rabbim go into the down. However, could Rabbi Zera, Amrav Nachman, could Rabbi Zera, Amrav Nachman, Amrav Zera, Amrav Nachman, Dalet Amos has smuch as Rishus Rabbim, Rishus Rabbim Davim, and because the area, the Dalet Amos within the by the Mavui close to Rishus Rabbim, that area is like Rishus Rabbim. So maybe you think it's only the Dalet Amos that Rishus Rabbim could prevent, but further in they don't have a say. However, Loi, that's not true. Why? Over there, when it says the Dalet Amos close to Rishus Rabbim, that only comes to Safek Tuma. Safek Tuma, we learned from Sota that Sota, she becomes Tmeya when she's in privacy. So Safek Tuma and the privacy, right? That is, we go L'chumra, right? Safek Tuma, the Rabbim is L'kula. So maybe, the Dalet Amos, that which is the Dalet Amos of the Mavui is like Rishus Rabbim, as public is Tahor, it's only when it comes to Tuma Tahara. But however, but over here, it's not a question of Safek Tuma or not, and therefore it's not just Dalet Amos that the people should drive, because sometimes it's market days or whatever it is, it gets super crowded, and therefore the people of the Mavui, the people of Rishus Rabbim, are able to go ahead and stop the people of the Mavui of creating walls or doors in order to stop the overflow of the public, because that was already established as public usage. And then we said, you can go ahead and force the divide as long as each one gets 9 kav. However, and then we had another opinion that says, no, not 9 full kav, but 9 half kavs. However, each one was like their locale. In other words, some areas it was easier to go ahead and plant seeds. It was softer. Other areas it was more difficult, took longer. So it takes longer. Therefore, you hire a full person. It's only 9 halves, right? Kav. So the Bavel, my Bavel, some Rav Yosef, Be Radu Yomin. For Baba, we say the amount it takes to plow, or for the amount it takes to plow a field in a full day. In other words, you rent a plow, so you want the full usage of that. So the Gemara says, "My Be Radu Yomin." So what does it mean a day of plowing? Now there was 2 types of plowing. There was a plowing after they did the harvest. So they just harvested, they cut off all the grains. Now they want to go ahead and plow it before the winter season. And then they plow it again right before they plant. They soften the earth then. So the plowing, right, during after the harvest, right, takes longer than the one the planting season. So let's say let's say it takes a half day longer for the plowing after the harvest when it's hard versus the spring when it's soft for your planting. Now, so which one do we say that it's a full day rental? All right. If we say if it's the day of planting, so Trey Yomi, right? But then it doesn't make sense because if we say it's a day of plowing for the soft season, so it's going to take a day and a half to go ahead and plow 3 months earlier after the harvest. Now, you have to go ahead and rent a plow for 2 days, but you're only using it for 1.5 days. So now you're causing a loss. So that doesn't make sense to say it takes 1 day to plow during the seeding season. And we're talking about where it takes a full day during the harvest season when it's hardest. So right? Then, so if that takes a full day during the hard season, so when it's easier to plow, it's not going to take a full day. It's only going to take you 6 hours, and you rented the plow for 8 hours for the entire day. So there's a loss there. Gemara says, maybe it would say like this: in the days of when they go ahead. In other words, it's basically they do it twice. Before yes, during the hard season it takes one. And the soft season, normally it takes less time, but since you do it twice before you plant the seeds, so therefore you plow it basically twice in that day, therefore it's a full day's usually plow, or or a full day of the seeding. But why does the other area take you longer? Because the other area was more mountainous or hilly, and therefore that took a full 2 days. So therefore, since that took a full 2 days, and the day of seeding takes you a plow 1 day. Therefore, there is no loss. You have a total rental of 3 days of a plow. And Amar Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman, one second. Davel, right? So Davel, let's say a water hole, right? So when they go ahead and they draw water, so Amar Rav Nachman Kidalu Yaimi. So in other words, you want to go ahead and divide it. So it says, okay, each one has that area where you can go ahead and draw enough water for an entire day. Because if I have to hire a guy to draw water, I have to pay him for an entire day, but there's not enough for him to go ahead and draw the entire day. The guy's only busy half the day, so it causes a loss. So therefore, it has to be a full. If I give you a watering hole, it has to be enough that he can hire a person for the entire day, and he'll be busy. And Pardes also an order, the Shmuel Bas Shleisha Kavin, right? That has an area of 3 kav, but because that would be a full day of work, but anything less would be a loss. And Tanya going learn how I'm going to sell you a portion of my vineyard. Should I go ahead and give him less than Gimel Kavin? Because if he sells him something less than that, it's going to be a loss in terms of efficiency. And on Rabbi Yosi, Ein Elu Ela Divrei Nevius, right? The amount that he said Gimel Kavin was he had like a shtickle nevuah. In other words, it really didn't come from Svara; it was a nevuah. And that's how he came to this this shear. Bavel ma'abora bavel. So Amarabba.
This would be like there's no logic behind that.
Right. So no, we'll soon see. So he came this halacha, but it was through Nevuah. He had a special set of Shmaya that it told him to do this amount, as we'll soon see later. This amount he didn't know, but it turned out it was the correct amount to do for a full day's use. That there was no loss. And Amar Rava Bar Kisna. Tlas Atziasa Bnei Tresar Gufne. An area of so why is that? So they had 3 rows of 12 vines each. So in order that'll be a full day's work. So therefore, right? So that's the amount of full day's work. So 3 rows of 12 vines, that is enough for a full day's work. And Amar Avdi min Chifa miyam shechar beis hamikdash nitla nevuah min Nevim v'nitla chachamim. The days when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, so the nevuah was taken from the Nevim and it was given to the chachamim. So alto chacham lav naviu, but the chachamim in those days did not have. There wasn't some sort of nevuah that they had. So Chacham has been saying af bishnita min Nevim and chachamim lo nitla. Even though that the nevuah was taken from the Nevim from the chachamim from Chazal, nevuah still remained. And Amar Amemar v'chacham adif minavi. And the Amemar says actually there's a proof, there's a passage you can bring that a chacham, right, is greater than a Navi. It says the Navi leva chachma ki. So it says right, a Navi right is like a chacham. Here he has chachma. So me nizla b'mi haviyamer kata nizla begadol. So it says who is compared to who? So it says a Navi is like a chacham. In other words, so therefore you do the smaller one is as when you're comparing it to the greater one, not the greater one is compared to the smaller one. So therefore you can see that the Navis compared to the Chachamim, so the Chachamim were greater. And Amar Abaye Teda Damar Gava Rabba Milsa. So you should know that how you know that Chachamim say that one Gava Rabba can say something. Misamer Mishmei the Gava Rabba Achrina and Kavose and somebody else can go ahead and say the exact same thing, and it'll be quoted in his name. And even though they didn't, say it together or didn't live at the same time, nevertheless, they're both quoted there. So how do they both say the same thing? It must be that they had this siyata d'shmaya, this nevuah, that they said the same thing, and that's why they're quoted to one another. So, Rav, my kusha, what's the difficulty? I have a dimon tarvayu b'nei chad mazel. Maybe they had the same type of mazel. They type of mazel that led them to this conclusion, not necessarily a nevuah, but they had the same type of mazel that brought this conclusion. So, Rabba Teda, the Amar Gava Rabba Milsa. Someone can say something in Misamra, and then it'll be said also later, Mishmei, the Rabbi Kiva Yosef Kavase. And then the great Rabbi Kiva will say like him. Now, no one is really as great as Chacham as Rabbi Kiva, and nevertheless, he was zeichet to say the same thing. So Amar Ravashi, so my kusha Duma Laha Milsa Bar Mazel. Maybe he wasn't the level of Rabbi Kiva, but he had the same mazel. So Ravashi, Teda Amar Gava Rabba Milsa. And later on, the Prophet will say something. Later on, they'll say the same thing with b'shem halach l'Moshe Missinai. So he can't say it's the same as Moshe Rabbeinu. So the Gemara says, v'dilma ksuma be'aruba. So maybe it's like a blind person with a skylight, right? They say, a blind squirrel, will get a nut or whatever the expression is, right? So a blind person, even though he can't use the benefit of the skylight, or he knows what skylight is, he can get lucky. So maybe the Chacham got lucky and said the same thing that Moshe Rabbeinu said, right? So the last time, however, no, because if it was given without a reason, so then if he gave it a reason, it was the same as Halach Moshe Sinai, fine. But if you gave it without a reason, it was the same as Halach Moshe Sinai. So Lamaisa, they say Gimel Kavin or whatever it is. So then there was some nevuah there. And Amram Yechem Yoshachar Beis Hamikdash Nitla Nevuah Min Avim v'Nitla l'Sheitim l'Tinoikas. But the day the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, so the nevuah was given to Sheitim, to people who I don't know, crazy, deranged, and Tinokas and minors. Someone who's doesn't have full capacity or some sort of disability. They have a shtickle nevuah. He was once in the markets of Mechuza, the Shamilo, Shaita, the Kamar, Reish, Mesivasa, Demalech, the Masimachsa. But the new Rosh Shiva is going to be appointed in the town of Masimachsia and Tevume Chasim. And he signs his name. So this guy who was deranged said, "There's new Rosh Shivas today," and he signs his name Tevume Chasim, and he signs his name as Tevyumi. So Omar said, Ravashi to himself, he says, "Man chasim to you, make rabbanon." Oh no, who signs their name like that? That's my pen name. So it must be that since this deranged individual said in the market, in the shuk here, that Tevyumi is going to be the Rosh Shiva, that's me. I better get out of here. So he left and went over there to Masim Achsia. So meanwhile, by the time he got there, even the Rabbanon Loisei Rav Acha Medifti Beresha, they wanted to go ahead and appoint Rav Acha Medifti, not Mar Ravashi. So it came into Shamasu. So when they heard that Mar Ravashi was coming, so they said, "Shadar Zugam the Rabbanon Legavi the Nuchabe." So they went to go ahead and basically get his rishus to go ahead and appoint. Sent two shlichim to go ahead and appoint the other guy to go ahead and point. Who was the one? Rav Acha. On a couple, right? Oh, he's a great rabbi is coming. We'll ask Rishus him to go. So Akve, he stopped it. He says, "No, you can't go ahead and do it." So they sent the second set. In other words, individuals 3 and 4, and once again, Akve Gabe. Right, they did it again, and they did it 3 more times. Ad the Mola Be'asar, until basically they sent to go ahead and appoint him. They never heard back, so they sent another group, and they didn't hear back, and they sent another group. They did it 5 times, total of 10 people were by Mar Bravashi, and came into Malu Asara. Pasachu v'tana darshins. Once he had 10 people there, now he had an audience. He had an audience there. He gave over a shear, and he gave a good shear. Because you don't go ahead and start a shear without 10. Plus Daf Yomi, right? Yeah. Oh, we have millions following on the Zoom. So Ravacha Nafshe, so Ravacha, who saw that I was supposed to be, and once it sort of there was a delay. And all of a sudden, got delayed more and it never happened. So right? Something that goes bad, right, doesn't quickly go good. And once I was delayed, then I saw I was no longer going to be appointed. And suddenly it was going good, then it doesn't quickly go bad. So that was the case of the Shaitas. The Shaita had Nevuah that said Daf Yomi was going to go ahead and become Rosh Yeshiva. So what's the case of the Tinaikis? So she was sitting as a young girl on her father's lap, and Havi Yasvi came the Rava and Merchama, and Rav Chizda was sitting there, and his daughters, there, Rava was there, and Merchama was there. They were having a tea together. Samarlei. Boys, which one do you want to go ahead and marry of these two great rabbis? He said jokingly, right, to his 8-year-old daughter. So Amalei Tavaya, she says both of them. And Amarava Vianabas, I'll go second. And it turns out that she went ahead and she married who was the first, not Rava, Rechama first, and then afterwards she married Rava, and that was a shtickle nevuah from her. So Rebbe Avdimi Dimin Chiba. So Rebbe, some Rebbe Avdimi from Chiba said, I guess he was the one who said the same earlier. The first girl that eats and drinks, he has basically two hearts. Then, however, he doesn't see clearly. Once he goes ahead and eats and drinks, then he has one levecha. Shemar says ish novuv yilavev. Right, so it says a person who is empty. We'll soon see what it means. Empty, right? He will have many hearts. And as navuv luchais. Matarini chala luchais. When it says to make the navuv luchais, it means the empty luchas. So you see over there, it means empty. So empty stomach will have empty hearts, multiple hearts. So you go ahead and eat, not an empty stomach, you'll have leiv echad. And a person who drinks wine often. So even though his heart is closed off like a basula, or a basula, a virgin, right? A basula is a woman who's considered to be closed off. Her basulam is closed, right? So his heart is closed. Right? The wine will open up. Shinamar the pasuk says, "V'sira basulos." Right? And then the wine will go ahead and open him up like basulos. And Amarav una brei de v'shuv shita chelik b'chor v'chelik pasha. Now let's go back. We're talking about areas dividing. So now areas. Let's say the father goes ahead and leaves over. And so we have to divide the land. So let's say one of them is a regular son and the other one is a Bechor. Now, Bechor gets double portion. So let's say there's 4 sons. So it's going to be divided into 5 lots. So does the Bechor, can he insist on, I want to get lots 1 and 2? The new guys get, then 3, then 4, then 5. Because 1 to 1 next to each other will be easier for me. Or can they say, hey, you get 2 portions, you get 1 and 4, and we'll get 2, 3, and 5. So Pshita, he gets 1 border, you just give him a larger portion all next to each other. However, Yavam, what about a Yavam? A guy goes ahead and he has a brother's married a woman, and he dies and forms a Yibum, and then the father dies. So the son, he replaces the son. So Yavam, he's just like a Bechor, my timer, Bechor Kari Rachmana, because the Torah does use the word Bechor. The pasuk says, so it says when the Bechor is tailored, so when it says they use the word Bechor, so it hints to the Yavam that he inherits just like a Bechor. And Rav Omar, the Pasuk says, Vayaha Bechor, he says the Bechor, and us have Yesa Kebechor, Vein Chalokos of Bechor. Now, he's like a Bechor that he performs Yibum. However, he's not like the Bechor that he doesn't go ahead and get the 2 portions next to one another. He can't go ahead and demand on that.
He gets 2 portions.
He would get 2. Just he can't go ahead and he doesn't inherit like a bechor. How it is? Amid said the person went ahead and he had he had land. He bought land next to the father of his father. So he called Pagu. Then his father died. They're going to go ahead and divide it. So I'm like, go ahead. My land was next to dad's, so give me my portion next to mine. So therefore, it'll be much easier. So Marabba can go and say, so like this, the other brothers have no reason to not give him that side. So let him make it easier for him. Don't beat me that stone and say, oh, you can't do it, and put up a little fight. So I'm asking Rav Yosef, so Malin but let's say that land over there was self-irrigated, and it was like the lands of Bamarion, who had top quality lands. In such a case, they could say, you know what, we're not just giving you the best land, right? Just because it's next to you, it's the most convenient for you. That's not fair. That they could go ahead and put a stop to it. And Trey Are Trey Nagre. But let's say you had two fields with two canals irrigating them. So I'm a rabbi. So he says one of them is next to me. So let me take the one next to me, and you take the other one. So he says, okay, like this, we don't do midas. So but now you're putting all your eggs in one basket. If one canal dries up, the other field is worthless. So I don't want to take that risk and just be the other one. Because let's say the water stops there. I want half of both, and you should take half of both. The halakha is like Rav Yosef, and the halakha is like Rav Yosef. You're allowed to go ahead and insist on that. What about Tarte Achad Nagra? What about two lands, right, on one river, right? Can they say in that case, Rav Yosef could go and say, this, it's the same source of water, therefore he could insist on the property next to him. However, you know what I like? I like when my land is in the middle and your land is on both sides, because you're going to have always sharecroppers going from one to the other. And it's going to provide some sort of security or people always around that I'm not worried about things getting stolen or destroyed. So therefore, it is beneficial for me not to give you lands next to each other and me be on the outside. However, the halakha is like Rav Yosef, the Afushila Milsi. So the halakha is like Rav Yosef, and we say that he can't go, that just insisting is not considered anything. And finally, the one last case. So Chad Gisa Nagra, Chad Gisa Nara. So let's say one side was a river and one side was a canal. Right, so you look at that picture in Rashi, right, on the right side, not the Tosfos picture, the Rashi picture. You see one, the river's going inside, and the other one's all there. So over there, we go ahead, and so since the river is better, but we can't go ahead and give just, divide it from the river in half. Or one guy gets, let's say, the left side, the other gets the right side, because then the guy on the left side, in addition to getting half the river, also gets the entire canal. So therefore, in order to go ahead and divide it evenly, so it's made basically in almost like 8 slices, like almost like a pie. So therefore, everybody has equal access to both the river and the canal, and therefore the farther off pieces are still connected to their also piece, so they don't have to cross into the other one. And therefore, this is the way to equally divide if you have a river and a canal going perpendicularly. So we'll stop here at the 2 dots. You got to go ahead and dive a little late, or just finish now. All right, Rosh Chodesh and Shkoyach, everybody. So tomorrow.